Bad Movie Crew. Bad Movie Crew.
And we are back with another edition of the Bad Movie Crew. I'm your host, Neil. Joins us by my brother from another mother and your host, Mark.
Heal.
And we are here to talk a bit of movies. We're trying a different format. We're trying to find some formats that make sense. Since that we don't get around to watching movies as often, we're still going to do that, but we are still going to have a conversation right now. We can talk about things, so we can do a bit of broad spectrum talking here. So Mark and I, we have noticed certain things in the film industry, particularly with things like action movies, superhero movies, the messages in movies, etc., etc. So we can sprinkle this in every now and then in between like big tentpole movie reviews. So we can just have a discussion. Nice Sunday afternoon. We can have a little.
All that missing is a Roman court.
All that missing is a Roman court. That's gonna come about eventually. But there may be spoiler warnings depending on where the conversation go. We will try not to spoil things, but invariably it may go down that path. So you've been warned. Spoiler warning. Anyhow, Mark, let's talk about superhero fatigue and what people are seeing, as the decline or the dip in superhero movies. Like this year, we would have seen Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, Volume 3, sorry. We would have seen The Flash. We would have seen Blue Beetle recent release. And those movies are doing all right. But obviously, banking on what we would have seen in previous years from DC and the MCU, the DCEU and the MCU, we would have seen obviously great numbers in those spaces. So, excuse me. So, you think there's a superhero fatigue? You think there's superhero fatigue?
I think there's a fatigue across the board, really.
Movies in general?
Movies in general, but obviously comic book movies have become comic book movies now are what action movies were to the 80s and 90s.
True.
They're the main things that are coming out now.
Mm-hmm.
The fatigue, I feel the fatigue is coming. Well, I can tell you the fatigue is coming from a couple sources. One, like Marvel, they were building to a point. They were building to the Infinity Saga. Right. Well, that's what the first couple of phases were, the Infinity Saga. Everything was about getting to the end goal of big bad Thanos, which is why a lot of people would have said a lot of the villains weren't memorable because they weren't supposed to be.
They didn't want to compete with Thanos, you think?
That was the goal.
But here's the question, though, not across you, but do you think that the villains were not necessarily the best or memorable because, one, there was a lot of origin movies in there, and two, let's be honest, those comic books, some of their greatest villains for some of these superheroes, the individual superheroes, are essentially color swaps of them, same power set, same whatever.
Ironmonger, the guy from Ant-Man, I can't remember what he was now.
Yellow Jacket.
Yeah, Yellow Jacket. So a lot of them are essentially the mirror of themselves. But again, you were still going for Thanos. I mean, outside of Thanos, the most memorable villain is probably Ultron.
You mean out of all of the first phase of the MCU? Yeah. Well, not the first phase, but the first few phases?
Infinity Saga. It's Thanos and then Ultron. Shout out to James Spader. Because of that movie, I started watching Blacklist. Yes, I was late, but I was on it. The problem. But they were trying to tell a story. They were trying to get to this point. So, and I think that's a 20 plus movie arc. Set of movies. So it gets to a point where, okay, we've come to the Infinity War and Endgame. And quite frankly, it will be hard to top those two movies. Like those, I mean, there are some plot holes here and there, but for the most part, they did a good story. They did a good job wrapping up that era. So now you've now taken people that may not have been comic book fans, as they're normally referred to as normies. I don't really like it, but
Normies.
I don't. Yeah, that's normies. You know what I mean? That's what it's called. But you have the people that aren't into comic books that got into it, that went along for the ride, and they've pretty much. Well, Iron Man was 08.
Yeah.
08 up to 2019. That's a good span of movies. That's a good span of. That's a good couple of years that you've dedicated to following that, along with one-off TV series, because you will have Agent of Shield that had episodes that was connected to what happened in Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, yeah.
Right.
No, yes,
Yeah,
Winter Soldier, yes,
right.
yeah.
So there's a lot of things and keeping up. After a while, that gets tiring. So after that, you got to kind of rebuild that, and it's kind of hard to follow that app, because Thanos was the fucking man. Thanos land and just was like, we see Thanos, and the first body he beat is the Hulk. And right there and then you understand, might give him a 2-piece combo of biscuits, chips, and no drink.
The man not the Bruce Banner tea.
All right then.
So listen, you need a cure, Bruce? I got a cure for you.
I got you covered. So it's going to be hard. And then out of that came a lot of politics. A lot of, as some people they say, the message started to creep into a lot of movies, and it more became about proving a point than telling good stories.
Well, like if you want to call Phase 5, call it, If you want to talk Phase 5, call Phase 5 by name,
But no, it's not. It was not. But it's not necessarily in Marvel. It was throughout cinema, which is going back to what I'm saying, that I think people are tired of what they're doing with movies, because they're trying to more push a narrative that, for the most part, for the last 7 years, hasn't been working.
But let me talk some things here though, because this is very interesting that you mentioned the last few years and the message that's being touted, right?
Yep.
Now, while I do agree that there's some sort of message or some sort of, dare I say, agenda afoot, right? It seems very heavy-handed. Do you think that because it's not all of these movies, because we're not only talking Marvel, we're talking across the whole spectrum of comic book movies, but do you think that it could also be a point where comic book movies, well, first and foremost, has to appeal to such a wide audience too? When, children would have grown up on, let's say you were 10 years old when you watched the first Iron Man, you're a kid, you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then when the Infinity Saga wrapped up, it was like you're 20.
Yeah.
So right now you're about 25, 26. You have different interests. And then to also consider that Marvel movies come at least 2-3 a year. You know what I mean? Like there's always some Disney Plus. Exactly. So I agree with what you're saying about the message, right? Because that has something to do with it. I think that helped the demise, but I think, or rather the decline. But I think, in my opinion, the frequency with which these movies have come out and the shifting audience, because the audience, as you said, the majority of normies, as they call them, far outweigh the comic book fans. So
yeah,
when in certain instances Disney plays fast and loose with the source material and various arts, and to me, if I can be completely honest, I think one thing I would say is a huge contributing factor is the dumbing down or the humor in some of these movies. Okay, let me explain. So, like,
say Thor: Love and Thunder by name.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying about Thor: Love and Thunder. But when you think of the MCU versus the DCEU, it's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they go a lot for comedy, right? Like Thor: Love and Thunder was heavy-handed with the goats. It was heavy-handed with a lot of comedic themes. Shoot, they even laugh at the face of cancer, quite literally. And the DCEU is more like it to the other side. Like, it's too gritty. It's too.
I've always felt like that's been a difference between Marvel and DC on a whole.
Yeah, there's a
lot of Marvel properties are very colorful. And I don't necessarily mean personality. I mean, just look at the landscapes. Look at the colors that their
color
villains
palettes.
wear.
The color palettes.
It's very bright. Like Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man. I guess you could say Fantastic Four. They more have colors that lend to happy. But when you look at Gotham, when you look at Batman,
dark and dreary.
Got dark and dreary. Green Lantern is primarily in space.
But let me ask: do you think that is based on the source material of the varying styles of the comic books, or do you think that is more the studios now playing loose and goose and taking a lot of liberties? Because while I do agree with DC being like Gotham, anything to do with Batman is usually very dark and gritty and brooding. But when you think about the Justice League movie, for example, right? Especially Snyder Cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
They still had a balance of comedy in there interspersed in there versus the MCU where, you know, a movie like, what was a movie? She-Hulk was heavy. Sorry, but like certain TV shows were heavy. Look at Daredevil, for example. To me, Daredevil had the perfect balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that it wasn't, that was in Hell's Kitchen, New York, right? Mm-hmm. Supposed to be gritty, and it was. But they still found ways and moments to have some levity and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think that, I think we both are kind of agreeing or making a good case of why certain things are bringing down or fatiguing the superhero genre. I think that it is a combination of many factors.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we going on 15 years now of just straight superhero movies, at least once a year for the last 15 years. And then with the advent of streaming getting more prevalent, and then you have like,
you get more properties, you get saturated.
Right. So yeah.
But I will say it personally, I don't mind being saturated with good content.
Of course, yes, I agree.
If you mentioned She-Hulk, if She-Hulk was anywhere near decent, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the same thing that's happening with Star Wars.
Oh my God! No, we don't talk about Star Wars. Don't do that. We're gonna have a separate episode for my beloved Star Wars, because Star Wars here clinging to the grave with three fingers hold on.
Them on the edge of the cliff, by the tip of the fingers. But they've gone to the well one too many times, and I think Disney is now starting to feel it. I don't think we would have ever in our lifetime say that Disney would have a problem with money, because it's Disney. Like,
do they really have a problem with money, or the bottom line ain't looking like how it's supposed to be looking?
I think if I remember correctly, they getting hit real hard. Like the losses, the amount of projects that they're putting out, and then we have the strike here that isn't helping.
Yeah.
So they're starting to feel it, which is why both Disney and Warner Brothers have pulled a lot of the projects. I think is it Marvel? Is it a Marvel or DC? One of the two just canceled a bunch of shows that they had already finished, but they didn't play. Yeah.
Already completed, shot and everything.
Yep. About 4 or 5 projects they had that they're not putting out anymore, but they're trying to see if anybody wants to pick them up to release them. So they're starting to feel it.
Trying to make about that money.
But they're starting to feel it. And the last Marvel movie that came out was what? Well, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And that wasn't bad. Like, to me, in the scheme of things, that was a very good movie. I don't think there's a bad Guardians movie for what Guardians is. I don't think you're not looking for much with a Guardian.
You're looking for a Civil War, or you're not looking for Winter Soldier or anything like that.
You know that it is a bunch of people in space,
poppy colors, wacky characters.
I mean, they did a very good job dealing with death and your past and that sort of stuff. It was a little deeper than I thought it would have
Yeah.
been. But I enjoyed it. You know, it was in that 2.5 hour range, and my brain was starting to pause every now and again. But
to
other than
spaz out.
yeah, but so it was okay. It seems like Blue Beetle has been pulled already. Like that.
The Blue Beetle is
Like that didn't even last longer than the Snow Pony Desert.
No, it did not.
And
So like, all right. So let me try to wrap this up because I don't want these episodes to be too long.
mhm.
Let me think of the future. Let's think about solutions or anything like that. Do you think that superhero movies are dead, or do you think that is a situation where maybe take a break, come back a few years down the line, or do you think that kind of checking out other properties, reboots, or even being more leaving out the wokeism and heading more toward the source material? How do you see them rectifying this kind of dip in superhero movies?
I think you need a break. One, take a couple years, see the direction you want to go. Leave out the woke shit because it ain't paying off. Left the woke shit right part is. Take a break, figure out, okay, this is the story we want to tell. Granted, as they said, when they brought Iron Man, they didn't think it would have gone the way it went. So they had to do a little retconning and sleight of hand waving to make it all make sense. Fair enough, but overall, the Infinity Saga was well done. Take a break, figure out what's the next story you want to bring. I think we've even had this conversation when you're dealing with the multiverse. That's ticklish to put on film because there's so many different.
Anything goes, but Ross, any and everything is possible
exactly.
in a multiverse.
And then to make that profitable, that's even more movies to incorporate to make it make sense. I don't have a problem with the multiverse, but if you can do the multiverse, I think something in the multiverse might make more suit a episodic sort of thing. Put that as an episode, like how they're doing with Loki. But movie-wise, you're not. You're gonna.
It could get very convoluted and very confusing.
Because you can remember, oh, this is Earth 613, this is Earth 2, this is Earth 8,000,012, and then you'd be like, all right, which one is it?
Mm-hmm. And then when all the characters, some of these characters all are the same, and very small differences, and one could be evil, one could be
Exactly. So I think you need to take a break, leave out the wokeism shit, and find the arc that you want to go with.
What art you think? What art? Because remember now, this phase was supposed to be Kang the Conqueror, right? And and well, obviously
I think they're trying to do Galactus. I think they're trying to do Galactus.
Somebody mentioned Doom. What later? I feel Doom is like that Thanos level.
Yeah, but I mean, I rate Doom, but and I probably can get murdered in the comments for this here, but I don't think I like Doom, and I never really followed him. But is he really? I know he's a man. He's about his people. He's about his nation. If you fuck with his nation, he coming with you. Yeah, he like to torment Reed Richards every now and again. But is he? You will have to tell me. Is he that kind of Thanos level big bad?
I would say, especially in recent iterations of the character, they have done a lot to make him far more powerful than he ever was. So, like for example, there was one storyline where he actually was omnipotent. He had, I think, he had like the gauntlet. He had several different. I think he had Moon Knight's ability or whatever. He had a huge bunch of other cosmic powers.
Okay.
And he was like hundreds, thousands, millennia, millions of years later, he's still about the place, and he's just looking for the last vestige of existence and everything like that. So they're trying really hard to make him. And then there's another comic book where he literally eviscerated Thanos just by holding his neck and like they're trying to do some wild stuff with him, man. But back in the day, Doom was a very campy, almost like a mustache twirling.
Yeah, okay.
But over the decades, they've done a lot to make him far more sinister and far more
menacing
and more scheming.
Okay.
Because he's a human being just with a huge intellect and vast amounts of money.
Yeah.
But he just, he's like, think of him as a Lex Luthor equivalent. And he really would go to any lengths to achieve power to be the most powerful being in the universe. So he can be that depending on if you took certain elements of certain things to come. But again, the unfortunate thing is that going to take a lot of setup, because for him to get these powers, for example, he could get the gauntlet.
Yeah, we know about the gauntlet.
Right. That's one thing we know about the gauntlet. And Moon Knight's power could be in there. He could
but then this still brings in Fantastic Four.
You gotta bring in Fantastic Four.
And you may start to want to bring in that, might then lead to bringing in X-Men. So you gotta really sit down and figure out how you want to do it.
And that's I like that, because then if you say like the next phase, right? Let's say they take a break, as you said, and they say the next phase, what we can do is we are all going to lead to Doctor Doom. And you don't tell the public that, obviously. So as you are going about the various setups, one of them could be Fantastic Four. And then just like how they did in the previous movies where he was captured. So you can have something where he's captured or he's defeated or whatever, and it takes him out of people's mind. You set him up so that he's like, you could see that the menace is there, that the villainy is there, that the evil intent and the badassery is there. Another thing with Thanos too is that he whooped the Hulk. So like, if you could show glimpses of this man get power, he can be a problem, right? But they defeat him somehow, and then like years later, you can see he get like the post-credit scenes. He got out. Like, you kind of try to get back that same formula that they did with Infinity Saga, and you try. And to me, I think if you because when you look at the first few phases of the MCU, they were very serious. Yeah, Iron Man was like, Tony Stark is Tony Stark, and there was a little kicks here and there.
Yeah.
But it ultimately became high stakes and very serious in the critical moments of the movie. Part 3 was, but there were still elements where, you felt the gravitas and the weight of the situations.
Correct.
Right now, compared to now, where everything is a throwaway, everything is a joke, everything is a punchline. Like, to me, when I realized that, the MCU in trouble is when they said Jane Foster. Jane Foster. When they said Jane Foster had stage 4 cancer, and they treated that as a throwaway, a punchline. Everything is a punchline now in certain Marvel movies, right? Dare I say nearly all Marvel movies, right? And the problem is when you do that now for the last 4 or 5 years, and now you're trying to rein in that by having a more serious like Ant-Man and a far more serious like Guardians of the Galaxy, right? People are conflicted with was the theme, was the overarching, like, Marvel movies are supposed to be fun, and people are not looking at individual characters anymore. People are not looking at individual movies anymore. They're looking at, well, there's a Marvel movie, so I looking at expecting to see punchy colors, funny jokes, sight gags, that sort of stuff. So I think if they were to, I agree with you, take a break, and kind of go back to the drawing board, and if they kind of like go back to the inspiration they would have had before in doing the post-credit scenes and making sure people had good arcs and stuff like that. They have a huge roster now of new characters.
Yep.
And comics are never short of characters, and now that they introduced the multiverse, you could even recast a lot of people like Steve Rogers and Iron Man. Even though I know people may not feel so good about it, you could take a risk and do those things, because we know actors get older and stuff like that.
Correct.
And these characters are supposed to be essentially
eternal,
ageless, right? So, you know what I mean? Like I think the Kang angle deserves, like, Kang needs his moment too. But for some reason, I feel like because of the setbacks they would have had in the last year, with just pacing, tone, and then of course real life situations that would have happened, I think they kind of got shelved that a bit. Not get rid of it, shelve it, and then kind of try to get a thing, because you want to introduce properties like Fantastic Four, X-Men. To me, those properties are more, they're serious, heavy-handed themes, but they can still be very comedic and very lighthearted and action-packed. So I do agree with you. It's just kind of charting a proper way forward. But anyhow, Mark,
Sir.
with 25 minutes, this was a pretty good discussion, man.
Yeah.
It's almost like
We know what we're doing.
we know what we're doing. But yeah, let us know what you think in the comment section below. Mark, you can sign us off, my brother.
Let's do this here again. It's been a while. Yeah. Thank you for watching. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share the content with all your friends. Let me know in the comments if you agree. How do you think they should go forward with comic book movies? Are you a fan of comic book movies? You think there's a lot of shite that you're done with them? Or, yeah, just let me know. As always, keep it respectful in the comments because, you know, we know them.
Yeah, well, y'all get
We know
one.
that.
Trust
we know
me.
that. All right.